Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're taking at the US market. So we'll first start off with the three index, followed by respective major components. So let's first start off with SPY. So as you can see, SPY had a recent low of 380.54 to a recent high of 429. Unfortunately, we see some resistance coming in at around 419, and we couldn't really break past it. So if we actually managed to break past it, then we're looking at towards 429. At the same time, you can see that this 61.8% previous resistance has now pretty much turned to support. So we actually closed the week at 410.54. If we were to start pulling back down next week, then we're looking at around the supports here at 409, 403, 398. And at the same time, you can see that this red baseline and blue conversion line is acting as a very strong support at 405 and 402, and coincides with this 61.8%. So these two are major supports for SPY next week. So let's take a look at QQQ. So QQQ, you can see that this rate conversion line is really holding this particular index up pretty well, and it's currently at 305.25. Closed the week at 306.20, and it seems that the 61.8% couldn't go past it at 311. If we manage to go past it, then we're looking at 319 and 330 as the next resistance and following target. If we pull back down lower next week, then we're looking at 301, just above the psychological 300 support level, and 297 as well. Looking at this blue conversion line, it's at 298.40. So these two will act as a very strong support for QQQ. Let's move on to the Dow Jones. So you can see Dow Jones is slightly stronger. We actually surpassed the 61.8% at 327, and we actually hit a recent high or a resistance at 333.70. Recent high was 332, and at 333, there were already some sellers appearing. And if we were to move on to break up above this 333, then we're looking towards this 341 as a potential target, short-term target for Dow Jones. Looking at the supports on the way down will be 327, 322, and 319. At the same time, you can see that this red conversion line, red baseline, and blue conversion line is at 323. So it coincides with the 61.8%, which means that this 322, 323 is a very strong and critical support for Dow Jones next week. Let's move on to the first stock, which is Apple. So as you can see, Apple recent low was 132.61, recent high was 166. And once we hit this 50%, 149, just above this 150 psychological resistance, we started to pull back down, and we show that a lot of sellers started to appear at this red conversion rate baseline at 149. On this particular Friday, we actually pulled back down to a low of this blue conversion line at 144.44 as well. And at the same time, 38.2% at 145 acted as a critical support for Apple. So if we start to break down, then we're looking at 144, 142, and 139 as essentially the last few supports for Apple before we test the lows of 132 once again. If we manage to break up above 150 levels, then we're looking at 153, 159, and 166 of its recent high. Let's move on to Microsoft. So for Microsoft, as you can see, recent low 246 and recent high 290. We actually managed to go above the 61.8%, but it seems to be not sustainable. We started to pull back down. So if we actually retest this high up to 273 next week, then we're looking towards 281 and 290 as well. Supports to watch will be 271, 265, and 262. You can see that this red baseline at 260 acted as a very strong support for the whole week and even on Friday itself. So if we pull back down to this blue conversion line, then we're looking at 265, which coincides with this 61.8%, which is a very strong and critical support for Microsoft next week. Moving on to Amazon. So as you can see, Amazon is finding a very strong resistance at this red baseline at around 2471. Recent high was 3172 and recent low was 2025. So we're looking at a resistance of 2463, 2600, and 2734 as a very critical resistance at 2734. And if we start to pull back down next week, then we're looking at 2407, 2326, and 2268 as critical supports. This blue conversion line acting as a very strong support at 2268. So this 50% coincides with it at 2268. So this is a very critical support that Amazon has to hold next week. Let's move on to Google. So Google, you can see it is slightly stronger because it is already above this red baseline. So looking at Fibonacci resistance from recent low of 2037 to a recent high of around 2456, we're looking at around resistance coming in at 2367. So if we can actually surpass this 2367, then we may be looking at around 245 levels or even 246 levels. This is a very critical resistance to watch for Amazon, because once we actually can clear this 2367, then we can actually potentially climb up higher. Looking at the supports on Friday, you can see that it actually closed above this 78.6% at 2289. So if we pull back down further next week, we're looking at 2235 and also 2197. And at the same time, you can see that it actually coincides with this blue conversion line at 2197, while this red baseline is at 2247. Next up, we have Tesla. So Tesla had quite a wild week because of its news from its Elon Musk. So you can see that this rate baseline acted as a very critical and strong resistance rather. On this particular Thursday, we actually hit this resistance at around, this was 788, and the day high was 792. And it coincides with this 50% at this resistance at 788. So if we actually manage to go above 788 next week, then we're looking at 827 and 883 as well. Unfortunately, on Friday, we actually dropped quite a bit of around 9 or almost 10%. And we actually closed below this 50%, 706. So we have to actually gap up on Monday or tomorrow in order to sustain our buying pressure. So it seems like this is a wave 2 pullback before looking at a wave 3. So this might be a low here and then a higher low. This is a high here. So we may be creating a higher high next week for Tesla, perhaps looking at 883 with 827 as a potential resistance. Not forgetting, if you look closely, you can see that this will be an immediate resistance for Tesla to break through next week at 788, which is this retest the high of this red baseline. So if you start further down, then I'm looking at this essentially the last support at 686 before we test 661 and 620 respectively. Let's move on to FB. So FB or Meta platforms, you can see that recent low 176, recent high 205. Unfortunately, we cannot break past this 78.6% convincingly and couldn't hold above it at 199. We hit a high of $200 psychological support to lure some breakout traders to come in above this $200 level. And we closed the week, unfortunately, at 190, which is essentially below the 61.8%. So the next support we'll be looking at is 188, 185, and 182. All these are critical supports for FB before we actually go and slide down to retest 176.11. However, if we actually manage to break past this 201, next resistance to watch would be 205. It coincides with this 61.8%, 205.89, before retesting 214 and also 224 as well. Lastly, we have Nvidia. So as you can see, Nvidia, recent low 155.67, recent high 227. We found some resistance at 191.72. We hit a high of 196, but we couldn't test the 61.8% strong $200 psychological resistance. And we started to pull back down. On a Friday, we actually closed near the 8.6% at 187.52. So next support to watch will be 180, 175, 171. At the same time, there's this red baseline and blue conversion line at 177 and 180 respectively. So this 177 and 175 will be a very critical and strong support for Nvidia to actually hold. So if we actually manage to break past this 196 and also this $200 psychological resistance, then we're likely to retest the high of 204, which is the recent high here. So hopefully it seems that next week we can actually go back up again, because it seems like we have been consolidating for this entire week. And hopefully there's more momentum or even good news next week ahead for the US market. And if there's any changes, I'll give you guys an update. Thanks for stopping by. Till we meet again, appreciate the manipulation.